Welcome back to Always Another Game podcast, where today we're going inside the mind of a basketball player. Very fascinating basketball player, currently living in London, but originating from Ukraine. We have Jane Davydiuk. Got it right. Jane, how's it going?
Yeah, so nice to hear you today, and would be really happy to talk about basketball today.
Yeah, I can't wait because actually you're my first guest referral guest. So obviously I have spoken to Charlie Dickinson, which will be on one of the previous episodes by the time this goes out. And she said that this was kind of a must-have conversation. So how do you know Charlie?
We know each other from Fractionals chat, and we also had a podcast together, and we were also discussing sport a lot, even though it was mainly about marketing. So she decided to show me a place where I can uncover sport a little bit.
Definitely. Yeah, that's a really interesting thing as well, because I was just saying beforehand, I'd love for you to share a little bit about what fractional is, because obviously I'm not massively clued up on it and what you do. But yeah, give us a little insight on that, and then we can kind of dive on in.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Jane, fractional CEO, but I'm fractional in terms of uh, giving founders, usually and CEOs, some innovative stuff into their companies. So most of the founders are usually really tired of operations and mundane work. They don't know how to set up all the processes. So that's where fractional CEO comes, and I help to organize the system so the company can work mostly without the founder, but he can hand over the responsibility either to operations manager or even to automations and the operation system itself. So I bring a little bit of a structure into a house, I would say.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense now. And I think automation is, if for any business owners here, and even in just in your standard life, how important it is to have things, a system or automation. I'm learning that a lot more as a business owner, because there are many strategies for that, like email automation, just even, responses to messages can be automated, and it does save a huge amount of time. So we will learn a little bit more on that as we go further into the podcast today. But what I love to start with, to let everybody know who you are and what you do. Who is Jane Davydiuk?
I would finally, I cannot only describe myself as an entrepreneur, but I'm also a basketball player, and I'm the person who usually loves to uncover different new spheres, new domains. So basically, I suppose that I came into sport and into basketball because I was discovering this world, and I was so happy to understand how all the strategies in sport work, not only in basketball, and then be able to bring it into my professional life and into my business operations. So I would say I'm a true lover of innovations, not only in sport, in business, but also in everyday life.
Yeah. And that's the gist that I've got from the conversations we have, is that passion for more so what sport and business is about, rather than necessarily just kind of like the love for play and the kind of the finer details. And I found that as well. A lot of people like, oh, did you watch the game last night? I'm like, no, I don't like watching. I like playing, because I can't watch, because I then start to innovate, I suppose. Oh, I would do this, or I would do this. And then I kind of, I couldn't just sit back and enjoy it.
Yeah.
So where did basketball start for you? Is it quite big in Ukraine?
Yeah, basketball. I know a lot of girls, especially girls, by the way, who play basketball. Because while all the guys are playing football, girls have also a place for them to refresh a little bit. So when I was in the school, it was like seventh, I suppose, or the eighth form, and all my friends, they were back then at 11th form, they were all playing basketball, and it was so attractive for me to have something like in common with them. So to be honest, at the very first, I just wanted to have this sense of belonging to
Okay.
others, to those
Yeah.
like mature friends. And that's when I just entered this sport for the first time for myself. I started visiting all these sessions with them. And back then in school, it was starting only with I would say with a recharging thing. It was nothing more for me. I was passionate to that. It was a place where I met a lot of my friends, but nothing else. It was just like a sport passion, I would say.
Yeah, we've had a number of different stories from athletes here and how they got started, but influence has come up a couple of times, and it is so powerful in today's world. We have a number of people with a platform of influence, and it can show you the true pros of having the right influence. So these girls had this, you were looking up to them, they were athletic, it was
Yeah.
exciting, and we do get the negative side where people take advantage of it, but you kind of fell into that lucky crowd of influence, it
Yes.
sounds like.
Yeah. I was lucky one.
Brilliant. So what was it about basketball? Because there are so many different sports, and I know you had this influence element, but it still didn't mean you had to carry on. What was it about basketball that you love so much?
Interesting question. And to be honest, before basketball, I tried a lot of different sports. I was into tennis, I was into jiu-jitsu, I suppose, into football also. But the thing was that all of those sports, in all of them, I didn't have this, flow. I didn't feel myself in a flow. So I was constantly still. I know. I remember myself playing football, and I remember when I was running and still thinking about something on the backbone. So it was really strange. And I remember the first time I entered the gym and I was playing basketball. And I just remember first second I started and the last second when I finished playing. I don't remember anything in between. So
Yeah.
it made me feel so into game that I don't know how much time I played. So probably because this thing repeated for me, I couldn't uncover all the secrets of basketball. Even after 6 years of playing professionally, I still remember that I have that passion into basketball. So maybe answering your question, because before basketball, I know that I tried maybe 7, maybe 10 different sports. I stopped on it because it was like a conscious choice rather than just, oh, I will try this one and I will stay with it for all my life. And even right now, that's interesting. After basketball, I tried also many more sports, and I am
Okay.
again back to it after being professional.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, and you're 100% right. Especially when you're playing at any form of competitive level, as soon as you start thinking, that's when it's over. And this is the one thing that I always found fascinating when you turn up to a game and your coach will be like, right, we're going to try this tonight. And you're like, what? Right now, we're going to implement this. We haven't practiced this. And as soon as you start thinking, you just don't have that flow.
Yeah.
And to find that, I think, is important. When you lose track of time, that's when you know you love something.
Yeah, you're right. I also had this feeling. And I remember when we had a competition with other schools, because I'm original from the west of Ukraine, and we had a local competition back then. And I just remember that our coach told us, okay, I know that you learned already a lot of techniques, and I told you a lot of stuff before, but right now, just don't focus too much on technique. Just play. Your head already knows what to do and how to play. And that was so, I don't know, it was so, I don't know, really smart approach of a coach, because I was really nervous that I would forget everything. And he just told, just forget. So
It,
after
yeah,
hearing this, it was really, I was enjoying the process a lot.
it's so the power of influence or the power of coaches is incredible, because you remember that specific moment. I still remember one from one of my coaches. We went to, it was a semi-final, second to last game of the season if we were to win, and it went to a penalty shootout. And he, to use his words as accurately as possibly can, it's like, this is such a bullshit way of deciding a game. Just go out there, just do whatever you want to do in your penalty shot. Who cares now? It does, like, it's a terrible way of finishing the game. We scored some of the best penalty shots I've ever seen, and we won, and we went to the final, and we won the final. And that, I was young at the time as well as a player. I was maybe early 20s. And if that, actually, and it just relaxes you, just something that a coach can say, and that stuck with me for decades, of that approach of being more relaxed and just being yourself. And you found that with your coach, that he was able to see that and allow you to perform as well, which was fantastic. So you said there you had a break, though. So something you love so much, you took a break from. What was that for?
I had to stop back in uni. I was playing already 6 years back then, and I understood that either I'm going even deeper into this profession, and it becomes not only like a professional game for me, but I would also need to build a career then in order to earn money of basketball, not only for my new bags, I don't know, but also to rent an apartment, to live in a new city, let's say. So back then I thought that, okay, am I good enough to continue in this direction and being so professional? And to be honest, I had a few talks with professional basketball players back then in Ukraine, and probably because I didn't have the whole picture of basketball in the whole world. I didn't know how serious it is for girls back then in the States, let's say, that I didn't have this whole picture. And I thought, okay, if a serious basketball player who earns like for life doing basketball in Ukraine lives like this, maybe I'm not sure going there. I'm not, like, I don't want that. So probably because I saw only the picture in Ukraine, and it wasn't that good way for me. So I thought, okay, I will go into business direction and I would stop playing. And I remember it was before my fourth year in uni, because in Ukraine we have 4 years for bachelor. So it was before that, and I remember how bad I felt back then. But to be honest, in Ukraine, we still need to develop this kind of sport a lot on a professional level, not only the level of players, but how it can work for those who earn money only being a basketball player. And if we can do this, I suppose many more girls will join this sphere more professionally. Because just to finish this thought, my 2 close friends from basketball team, they had to go to the United States right now, and they play their basketball because in Ukraine they couldn't develop that much, unfortunately.
Yeah, isn't that the same for most small sports? Often ends up in America or Canada or anywhere that just has the highest level. And it is that sacrifice. And it is a huge part of it. It is a huge part of, some of it is how much you want it. And I think there is a huge financial element as well. There was a time where I was looking to go and play in Finland. Finland is known for its ice hockey, but it was just not affordable. So it never occurred. So but then it doesn't mean that life's over, right? Because as you said there, you made a choice.
Yeah.
You decided to go down the business route as well. And what I love so far is as much as you were good at your trade and you love playing, you use this word quite a lot called emotional recharging, which I've never heard that terminology before. So when you say that about playing sport, what is it that you mean?
So usually when I'm into something, let's say back in school it was about studies. Right now it's all about work. So I concentrate that much that even after, let's say, 12 hours of working in the evening, when I stop working, I continue thinking about processes, what could be improved, about my clients. And I constantly have this emotion and feeling of concentration. So in order to have a little bit a switch, I usually do basketball now, and back then in school and uni I did the same in order to recover a little bit, in order to change the focus, and in order to, you know, how to say, to feel something different. Because when I'm
Yeah.
constantly concentrating, like, I can't feel the world on different vibes. I'm constantly having this one role of Jane being a professional, and or back then Jane being a student, but I wanted to have another role. And this emotional recharging let me feel another role, I would say. It maybe back then it was a Jane basketball professional player. Right now it's Jane just a basketball player, but it's still another role. And without having switch between different roles and having this emotional recharging, it's really hard to feel the life to its fullest.
Yeah. And it's going back to the start of the conversation, isn't it? Where we say where you're not thinking.
Yes,
So if
yes.
you've got that passion to play, you can't think about anything else because your natural behaviors are taking over on the court. And as we know, most of our best thinking is done subconsciously. So when we
Yes.
switch off, we actually switch on.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
What did you take away from that when you kind of realized that that was the case? What did you then start to notice in your own life and in business?
I started seeing different parallels, and let's say the last time, it was right before we agreed to have this podcast with you. I was at a basketball, and it was my, I suppose, fourth time in a new team here in London, and I noticed three different insights just being on the court back then. So the first interesting thing which I realized is that, wow, when you join a new team, it's like joining a new team the same in a company or joining a new client's team. You can't be just like, that you are good and you can play as good as you want. But when you enter the basketball ground, you have to show your trust, your loyalty to the team, and the same as in real life in work. And only after showing your loyalty, team can share a ball with you. You can play in a team and not just being alone on the ground, because otherwise, like, it's impossible. We all know for team games, it's impossible to be just egoist and the only one cool player. So the first insight I got, even if you are good enough and you know this, it doesn't make any sense, if you don't show your if you don't build connections and ties with the team, because you won't receive a ball and you won't be able to do anything. So like connections and relationship even better more than your own skills. So that was the one of the biggest insights for, I suppose, for last month. And that's really interesting how we can make this parallel between working environment in business and environment in basketball.
Yeah, because I kind of see two things on there, which is one which we talk about a lot in business, which is the know, like, and trust. People aren't going to buy from you, join your program, buy your product if they don't know you, if they don't like you, if they don't trust you. And we're in a really tough trust scenario now with everything that happened with lockdown and the government and sales. We are in a big trustless time,
Yeah.
and it is very difficult to build up. And like you said, they may know your background or anything, but well, why should we trust you? You've never played for us. I've never passed you the ball. You've never passed me. Why should I trust
Yeah.
you?
Yeah.
And that comes to the second point of having to prove yourself. I'm having this conversation a lot at the moment with people that are working 10 times harder just to stay afloat because of the conditions we're in. And the conversation that comes up is, why do I have to prove myself? I've been doing this for X amount of years. I'm this good. But isn't life about constantly proving ourselves, proving our worth, proving we're capable to a certain level where you're not kind of like waving the white flag and begging people to see your value, but you're always kind of keeping on your toes, as we used to say in sport.
Yeah, and it's the most interesting thing here is that you have to join a really small cohort of people, maybe like 1% or 2%, and only at that level you don't need to prove. But how many of us can join that 1 or 2%? So you mentioned that it's about proving someone something, but for me it's always about about building maybe another set of skills, or maybe developing yourself from another perspective. Why? Because back in my 20s, I was really a good basketball player in one team, in one environment, with one culture. But right now I have to prove, as you mentioned, proof. But for me, it's more about developing new skills to show also, not only for myself, but to others, that I can do. It's not the same that every time you have to prove. Proving something is about, for me, the same factors, like external, internal factors, but how often we have the same factors. So it's not only about proving, it's about developing maybe one minor side of yourself, which is totally different now than before. So every time it's about constant developing, I would say, rather than proving something to someone.
Yeah, because I love that, because in sport they do say the game is played, any sport, the game is played differently in different countries. And you hear a lot about football, you've got to give this player time to blend in, to learn the English game, as they call it. So what did you notice from playing in Ukraine and in the European side of basketball? Was there any difference about coming over and starting to play for an English team?
Yeah, that's really a cool topic, because the first thing is that in Ukraine, we don't have that tough competition. What do I mean tough competition? If you are Ukrainian and you play in the same culture, people feel that you are still their nation, you are still Ukrainian, so they cannot be so, I don't know, they are not fighting, they don't have this internal anger, I would say, because they still feel that at the end of the day we're still playing to prosper Ukraine. I would say that's the final goal of Ukrainians. And I remember myself playing really tough. Maybe it's because my internal character, I don't know. And back in Ukraine, I thought, wow, I'm one of the toughest girls here in Ukraine. But when I started playing here in London, I felt this competition that much, and I wasn't the toughest one. Because girls, when you live in a country where you have tens of different cultures, tens of different nationalities, they initially had to fight for something to be here. So it's not the same. Everyone here is not playing only for UK or London. People here play mostly for themselves. If we speak not only about, I don't know, like worldwide champions, but the thing is, when you play for yourself, there is a higher likelihood that you would have more anger and you would fight even harder. So that's the first and biggest, I would say, change which I felt here after Ukraine. In Ukraine, everyone is like, "Oh, hello, it's really nice to see you. We are all friends." And even after the game, you have this feeling. But here it's totally different. You feel that you have to kind of fight for your place in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's almost, yeah, and an element of competition, I suppose, as well. I found my sport is quite niche over here to a certain point,
Mm-hmm.
and you get away with a lot at club level that you don't get away with as you do find the competition. And I think that has a factor on even winning games and the character that it creates to compete when things are against you, or you're 1-0 down, and it's only a minute left, and there's a certain type of character player that will show up at that time. And I think you're right. I think sometimes your upbringing and how much resilience is built in that competitive nature has a factor when we really need it. And that isn't just in sport, that's in life as well. I think mental resilience is losing its touch a little bit,
Yeah.
but I think it almost in a way might be coming back, because I think people are realizing the importance of it.
Yeah, yeah. And maybe you're right about the relation to real life. Maybe it's so how to say that I can notice this, I don't know, is it phenomena or whatever, that much? Because before I was only studying abroad for half a year in Germany and in Austria. And because of this, I didn't feel this competition that much. So I didn't live for a long time before abroad. But right now, maybe even I have just a small doubt, but maybe I felt this competition at first in real life, and after that I did this how to say like I applied the same feeling to sport. So maybe they were not originally from basketball and I felt it in everyday life, and maybe I just applied them to basketball.
Yeah, but it's the same thing. Sports skills carry over to transfer in life, and life skills transfer over into sport and into
Yeah,
business. All skills are transferable, and that's what I'm trying to get from this podcast, is those type of stories that it goes all ways.
yeah,
And if we're good in one area, then we can be great in another area if the skills are transferred and we learn the new topic. And that's what I would love to know is what is one thing you learn from having to integrate into that competitive nature, and you mentioned about the community and the know like trust. What was the one big takeaway that you had from that?
uh, the first is don't be afraid, Jane, to show that you can be fragile. Because if people still feel that you are a person and you have internal feelings and you have emotions, and you are not just the person who is saying, "Oh, I don't need your trust, I don't need your loyalty, I will play on my own and I will fight everyone." It doesn't work like that. So the easiest way to build a good connection in a team, and what was the biggest insight so far, is to show that you are also a person. And even though you have totally different backgrounds, different professions, different nationalities, you are still a person. And if you show that it's hard right now, and basically maybe I don't know some of the rules which they like implemented because we are playing different games here, I mean different types of basketball. So if I don't know something and it's new for me, I should share that, because once people start feeling that you are not trying to beat them, you are not trying only to compete, but you want to belong to their team, it's totally different rather than just fighting, because fight only up brings negative emotions. So the thing I would like summarize is to show that you are a personality, you have real feelings, and not be afraid, Jane, or everyone who is listening, to share those emotions with others.
Yeah, because I can only imagine as well, looking from the other player's perspective, is the coach has said, "Hey, we've got this girl, this woman, Jane, coming over to play, and I don't know
Mm-hmm.
that, you know, whatever, they might have shared your stats or something, and some
Yes.
of those players might have gone, oh, you know, defend straight away. Well, she's coming to take my spot, or you know, she's gonna be, and our first human instinct is to defend, right? You mentioned
Yes.
about being attacking there. Our first instinct is to defend. So, you know, it can't be easy for you to come into that environment, and for them, there will be an element of a threat as well. So to be yourself, to show that you are a human, you're not Jane the threat,
Yeah.
that can
Yes.
help remove the defense system as well. I remember players used to call, oh, we've got this player coming into the team, and you're like, oh, okay, are they going to help us? Are they going to be a nice person? Whose spot are they taking? There is always that threat, and you know, but then once you realize, actually, this is a nice person, this is not a threat, this is a person, they're cool, they're good, they're helping the team, that feeling of threat and defense goes away quite quickly.
Yes, totally agree with you. And especially if you have, if you ask people advice, if you ask their thoughts about your play, etc. So being really open really helps.
Yeah. Yeah, amazing. And so you said there was a few other things that you'd kind of learned
Yeah.
and evolved as well. What was the next thing that came up?
Yeah. So the next thing was that I was connected with leadership a lot. It was still back to my just start here, and the team really didn't know me a lot, so everyone was like defending their positions. They were just passing the ball to only those who they knew, and it was already, I suppose, a second part of the game. We were playing, like, the score was not that high, so we were not just winning, we still had a place where we can lose. But I remember one girl, we were like almost finishing the game, and she just passed me a ball and she said, please, like, run. She said this during the game, and she shared this from one perspective. She shared responsibility, but from another perspective, she gave me a chance to score another point for us, and I did that. But then when I started thinking, and I understood that that was a point of true leadership, because she knew we could lose, but she decided to give me a chance, because otherwise, if I continue to be there like a weak point, as they saw me back then, and I continue joining them, they wouldn't win in a long run. But this leadership, which this girl like showed me, is that once you want to think about long-term goals, and once you start thinking for a long-term wins, you start investing into people around you, even though they can be really weak right now. So it was a great comparison with the work related topics, because I remember when back like 2 3 years ago, when I was working full time, let's say, I remember every time when new like team members were joining us, and some of the managers were also like doing this, oh, like, we have these strong team members and these weak team members, maybe we will end their probation period soon. But only the coolest leaders, who can really call themselves leaders, gave some chances to those people, and those people were really successful. So it's not only about strengthening those who are already good, but it's also in seeing the talents which may be covered right now with other threats, for instance. So it was an amazing comparison in my head, when a true leader see you as a good player, maybe in a few, I know, weeks, months, years, but they start giving you chances. And at that moment, others, and me personally, you feel that much strength, and you feel that much, I would say, loyalty to that leader, that you start playing, I know, like a best best basketball player, and that inspires really a lot.
Yeah. And that's the power of leadership. A lot of people fall into a leadership role. They're really good at a job and they get promoted into a leadership role, but they're not a leader. Leadership is a trait, it's a skill,
Yes.
it's something you develop. And empathy is a massive trait on that. And like you said there, understanding that somebody who might not be strong probably aren't doing it to be a nasty person. They may be lacking in confidence. They may not have been given the opportunity or the voice to speak up and to show their worth. And yeah, I've spoken about leadership a few times. There was one book called Extreme Ownership that I absolutely love, and it was ex-Navy SEALs that go into businesses and fix businesses, and the leaders pull them in and say,
Mhm.
right, X, Y, and Z, they're not doing their job. So they go spend the time with X, Y, and Z, and they find out that actually the problem is from the leadership via communication or not giving them the tools, or, and what a lot of people forget in sport and in business, you're all on the same team. You're all
Yeah.
pushing for the same goal. Even if it doesn't feel that way, you all are trying to push towards the same goal. So how can we bring that together so that we can all go in the same direction? And again, a lot of it starts right at the top from that leadership level.
Yeah, yes, you're so right. And just to wrap up this topic, I have one experiment in my head. I read in one book that like a scientist conducted two researches. One research was discovering students who didn't receive any good words from their teachers, and another research was related to the class where teachers were constantly saying good words to every classmate. And then at the end of the day, the class who constantly received all the, I don't know, appraisals, good words, they were much better in their like scores, in their overall level of knowledge, even though the starting point of both classes were the same. So they had totally the same marks, the same knowledge. But after, you see, the short period of sharing good vibes from teachers, they improved their levels that much. So that means how much words and this good leadership and our attention to others mean in their development.
Yeah. And the thing is about negativity and inspiring through threats or shouting, or, I guess maybe you had it in basketball, but in ice hockey we called it benching. If you weren't playing very well, you were benched. You spent some period of the time missing out. And I remember this one. I think I only ever really got benched like once or twice. It just didn't happen because I always built my game around hard work and ethic. And I got benched and I went on the next shift and I did something massive, and all the players were like, "Yeah, this is amazing," because I was trying to prove him wrong for benching me, but yet my relationship from him started to break. So after, again, another shouting, another benching, then I
Yeah.
go down again. And there's an endpoint where that stops working. Whereas
Uh-huh.
with guidance, appraisal, constructive feedback, I don't think it always needs to be like bunnies and
Yeah.
rainbows,
Yeah.
but with the right approach and communication, you can continue to build a relationship whilst still leading. It's such a hard skill, leadership. It's an
Yeah.
ever evolving skill, but you get
Mm-hmm.
that every day because you're basically leading leaders now, aren't you, with what you do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But by the way, you asked me about insights, and if I right now I'm applying basketball insights to my business, but I remember the point when I was applying even business insights into basketball the same, and it was about this building relationship. I wasn't thinking about like empathy or appraisals. I was just focused on the thing that I need, simple thought back then, but I need to build relationship with people in order to be a good team member and in order to succeed. Otherwise, if you just think in a short term that, okay, I do something good for a person, I receive something good, or I do something bad, I receive something bad, it's not really about long term. But if you build, this sense of belonging to the team, if you constantly contribute to the team, it's about long term, and it's about building relationship and then receiving great results. So I can relate to the topic you mentioned.
Yeah, but isn't that actually what we all want? We want to live in the now with the long-term payoff, but
Yeah.
we often don't. We focus the wrong way in kind of now, and we kind of push to the back burner of what is actually possible. We don't do the work right now. How do you work that? How do you kind of keep yourself switched on in the now, but making sure success is coming?
If we speak about work-related topics, I would say that I can see the direct correlation between my impact on a day-to-day work with my clients and the result which I get after, because usually I work with founders like 4-6 months. I set up everything and then I just leave everything for the operations manager, let's say. And then I can see how often they recommend me, how good they like what is the feedback they leave me after our work, and then how the award is spread it, and it's only 4 or 6 months. So based on the idea that, okay, if I let's say do this small presentation right now for a client, maybe it's a really nice looking, but what would be the outcome for them, what they can take from this presentation? If it looks good, like, will they have this result at the end of the day if it's not based on their really great advice or recommendations? So every day before I send something to a client, I double check on the details in the work I produce, because to be honest, before I became this self-entrepreneur, sole entrepreneur, I wasn't that focused on details, because every time you work in a big company, even in a big startup, you feel that you're part of something, but you don't see the direct correlations with the results, because you have
Mhm.
financial director, or commercial director, CMO, whoever, and you don't see how your today's work impacts the final result. But when you are a solopreneur, you can see that, okay, if I don't give something really valuable to my client today, I will see the decrease in the clients at the end of the day. So it's
Yeah.
much easier to see this impact. And from this point, I started finally diving deeper into details and paying attention to them.
Yeah, and I think you said there was a few things that you wanted to cover with kind of the changeover from basketball to business. But one thing you did mention before we kind of came on, one of the things was persistence and how important that is. And I think you've just kind of started the wheels in motion there with the attention to detail, but the persistence to continue to learn and to improve yourself. So, how important do you think persistence is in success in sport and business?
Mm, I would say that without persistence, even the most talented people, in my opinion, cannot achieve anything, because the talent, it's also about uh, a, a certain process and the process of development. And if I, let's say, develop my, I don't know, running abilities once per month, at the end of the day, I have like 12 trainings per year, and what would be the result? But if we speak about persistence, let's recall guys who write usually daily, and then they become the world-known writers just because, as they share, usually they were writing daily. So if we speak about professional sport, if we speak about successful career, I'm for 100% sure that it is only possible to become successful if you are really persistent enough, even with small steps, even with maybe sometimes small gaps. why gaps, why I'm talking about them, because still we need to recharge sometimes from this role as well, because today we were discussing with you different roles, and if you are persistent only in one role, it can be really from one side dangerous, another side boring, maybe even so sometimes you need these gaps to recharge from this role of professional player or professional CEO, let's say. So to wrap up, persistence is the only key which can unlock us the true knowledge of how to be successful and how to know ourselves and know where the result really lies. So it's the main instrument, I would say.
Yeah. So if somebody's listening and they are struggling with whatever you want to call it, persistence or consistency, what one tip could you give them to help on that? Because I do agree, I think it's very, very important. So what advice could you give them to get started with it?
The main thing before looking for persistence, because I may speak about this habit trackers in your phone or habit trackers in your notepad, but I don't believe in external motivation a lot. So before starting to look for persistence, if you don't have one, ask yourself if you are doing the things you really want to do. And for personally, I believe that if people really want to do something, they won't look for persistence, because persistence is only built on a genuine desire. So let's say if I want to play basketball and I do really want to do it, I may have a question of going to basketball or not going regularly only if I am like ill or if something is going wrong with my, I don't know, maybe mental life. I mean, different states people can have, but the overall idea is that we can only have persistence if we have internal motivation. Otherwise, I don't see a point of building external motivation and persistence.
Because it will go right if you're just setting a goal because you feel like you have to. Obviously,
Yes.
with my career, weight loss has been a big thing, and if you're just setting a weight as a number, you can track your habits and you can get in the buzz of getting your wins by hitting those days. But as soon as that tough day hits, as soon as you don't want to get out of bed, as soon as you are a little bit poorly, it just
Yes.
disappears if you don't have that internal motivation, internal drive, purpose, whatever you want to call it. It has to be deeper, and I think we all know what that is. It's
Mm-hmm.
just bringing that to the surface. People who want to lose weight, they know really what it is. They don't want to pull their t-shirts anymore, or they don't want to take their top off at the swimming pool. They want they want to have more confidence to talk to a potential partner. There's always something a bit deeper, and I think we
Yeah.
need to bring that out more in sport and business, what we actually really want. And it's okay to say it.
Yeah. 100% agree with you.
So I'm going to put you on the spot here. What is it that you want?
um, so it would be an interesting answer related to my overall life and kind of a smaller one related to basketball. If we speak about my overall life, I want to have freedom, and because of the freedom, all of the decisions are made. I left my full-time job because I wanted freedom. I went especially like to London because the spectrum of freedom here is huge. I want to have my personal brand because I want to go to a world round trip, and I'm driven again by freedom. And if we speak about basketball, it would be interesting, but I started thinking about like why I'm again back to it. I started thinking about my mental health a lot because it's also part of this freedom, because you can't think about huge scale in the world and don't be really conscious or don't have developed mentality. So I went again and started playing basketball because I again had this feeling of the flow, and it
Mhm.
helps me that much to be mentally stable, to have this emotional recharging, which I mentioned, that it's also one how to say small portion of my freedom, of my mental freedom. And basketball basically helps me keep keep this feeling, yes, keep this feeling of oh, I know myself, I know what can recharge me, I know how to do it, I want to do it, and I can do it, and I can be back to basketball even after a few years of not playing it because I am free. So yeah.
I love that, because we've got the physical element of freedom and the mental element of
Yes.
freedom there.
Yeah.
You want to live that life of no restrictions and travel the world, and you want to be free mentally, because basketball's your happy place, your non-thinking automatic
Yes.
place. So basically, we are just talking about freedom.
Yes. Yes, you're right.
It's yeah, that's I think that's what we're all chasing.
Yeah.
Jane, it's been lovely to sit down and talk to you. I've loved kind of just your passion throughout. You can really tell that you've bought into kind of like what this podcast is about, because you can see the crossover between business and sport as you've shared your story. If anybody wants to get in contact with you about business, or they want to kind of see anything about your basketball, I don't know if you shared that much on social media, where can they find you?
LinkedIn, Jane Davydiuk is the best place to find me. Also, Jane DVD in Instagram. I would be happy even to play, not only do business stuff. And I'm really happy to speak about finally business from the perspective of sport, because to be honest, last 2 years, even three, I was that much into business that I really missed the stocks, which can cover other roles, as I said before, or other dimensions of our lives. So thank you for focusing on something really important besides our work.
Yeah, it's so easy, isn't it, in today's world, to get caught up in one area, but there is so
Yes.
much more to it, and it's just kind of raising the awareness to the importance of having your social life, having a an active life, having everything covered, because if you lose one and you have
Yes.
nothing to fall back on, that's when the trouble starts to occur. So I think you've shared that well today, the importance of having somewhere where you can switch off, but you are also happy doing so, not just sitting on the couch doing nothing. You fall into a state of flow, and I think that's a fantastic word. So yeah, thank you so much for coming to share your story.
Thank you.
um and yeah, I'd like to remind everybody before we leave that there is always another game. Thank you very much for everybody attending. Cheers.
Thank you so much, everyone.